Hello guys, it's great to be with you again today. We want to move on today, and I want to take you to James chapter 1, verse 13 through to verse 16. This is what it says. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is fully grown, it brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my brothers, my beloved brethren. Don't be deceived, people. We're talking not about tests right now. We're talking about temptations. And you all know that there is most definitely a difference between the two. The first one is some of the tests that God takes us through for the purposes of becoming what he wants us to be. He tests us. He's allowed to do that. He's God. But then we move into the realm of temptation, which is pretty much in our court. When we are tempted, it's not that God has tempted us, it's because we have fallen into temptation. Now, the word fall here kind of applies as it did back then when we were talking about the other trials and tests that we have to go through. We fall into them. We don't always plan them. We don't always know that they're coming. We trip up on them. They suddenly approach us. They're suddenly in our face, and we respond to them, and in a sense, we fall. Now, the reality of this temptation is not so much, like we said with the trials as well, is not so much when I am tempted or if I am tempted, as much as it is most definitely when I am tempted. It's just a matter of time. The if doesn't happen, it's a when thing. And when we are tempted, we generally ask ourselves three questions. What do we do with this temptation? Where will we place the blame for this temptation? Am I going to blame Satan? Am I going to blame people? Am I going to blame circumstances? Or am I going to own it myself? And then once we've acknowledged that, we ask ourselves, where do we find the strength to deal with this particular temptation? We face temptation daily, don't we? We're tempted to anger, we're tempted to dishonesty, we're tempted to lust, we're tempted to resentment, to bitterness, immorality, impurity. These are all some of the temptations that come across our path. Now, I know that Satan is able to make these temptations happen, and indeed, he's pretty good at doing that. He's had a lot of practice. From the Garden of Eden, he's been tempting, and he did it with Adam and Eve, and they failed, and he's done it ever since. He's very he's very predictable in his temptations. He's not very variation-oriented towards this. He's pretty much stable, but what he does obviously works. Now, according to the passage here, the reasoning concerning temptation happens like this. In verse 13, part B, it talks about, I am tempted of God. Can you ever think of that? Now, here we have a distorted reasoning. The reason that we think that we're tempted is a distorted one. We think that God has allowed this. We think that God has brought this across our path. God cannot do that. Never has, and he never will. He can use the outcome of you falling into temptation to grow you, if you'll respond appropriately with repentance at the forerunner. He can use those things to help you to become a better person so that you don't fall again. But what we're talking about here is something that comes from more ourselves than anything else. You see, when we have a distorted view of who God is and what God does and how God responds, we find ourselves in an invidious position to judge God according to our own circumstances. We think because that we are who we are, that we are owed some preferential treatment. It's not going to happen. We are as tempted as anybody else. In fact, Jesus sets the pace, does he not? Where Jesus says, where we read in the writings that Jesus was tempted in exactly the temptations as we have. When he was on the Mount of Temptation, the three temptations he had to face are exactly the same as the ones we have to face. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. You can put them all down into those three categories of temptation. People, isn't it great to know that Jesus doesn't stand in criticism of us because he understands the power of temptation. But the different thing was that Jesus knew how to deal with that particular temptation. So we need to learn a few things. So let's first of all today just talk about this distortion that we have, that we think that temptation comes from the outside. No. Temptation is on the outside, but our response to that temptation is internal. It goes on up here and in here. We're going to talk tomorrow about how to deal with this distorted view of what temptation looks like. I hope you can join me. We're going to whack this thing. It's going to be cool. Have a great day, people. See you tomorrow. Bye.